Peacemaker on HBO Max is basically James Gunn unleashed. If you've ever loved a James Gunn movie, this really does bring forth everything he does well as a director and a writer. But if you're not a huge fan of his style, then you may not like this one, because it literally seems like DC said, all right, go do whatever the hell you want. And he did just that. What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Eddie Knight. This is Nerdy Before It Was Cool, where we nerd out about TV and film, especially ones that have to do with comic book characters. I just watched HBO Max and DC's Peacemaker. This is basically going to be a spin-off of the Suicide Squad movie directed by the same director, James Gunn. This series is following the events that set forth after the Suicide Squad movie. It is about 3 or 4 months after all those events took place. Now, if you've been a part of my community or subscribed to my channel, then you know I was a bit skeptical of this show. And what I do when I'm skeptical of a show is I take some time and I go ahead and watch the pilot episode. It's basically going to set up the tone, set up the characters, and allow you to see the journey that the character or characters are going to go on in the series. It basically provides you with all that information and tries to sell you on that idea. And under that merit, man, I would have to say that this pilot episode succeeded, man. I'm sold. What I want to do is just sit down real quick and tell you about the things that I liked, things that I didn't like from a completely unbiased standpoint, and give you a little bit of information to see if you might want to check this thing out or not. First thing that I want to talk about that I like is the style. I don't really like when a series or movie looks like literally anyone could have shot or directed it. The first movie I ever saw from James Gunn was Slither, and I see little elements of that movie sprinkled in throughout the pilot episode of this series. There are some elements of suspense in here that are done very, very well, and if you watch the James Gunn film, then you know he always mirrors his elements of suspense with a little comedic undertone. And what I think he's really good at is provoking this really weird, uneasy feeling. He's good at making you kind of chuckle or laugh at things that you're not really supposed to be laughing at. I do really like the style of this. I tried to find how much the budget was for this series, and I could not find it anywhere, but the show does look really good. Second thing, I like how this episode popped off. James Gunn being James Gunn, he starts right out the gate with some comedy. Now, while I don't think every single joke landed in this sequence, and I thought it maybe drew out just a hair too long, I respect the ballsy move because it's telling you right off the rip what you're getting into. This is that point right here where a lot of people that don't like James Gunn's style of comedy are going to jump ship and be like, all right, this isn't for me. And I respect that because he could have held that off until later and got you hooked with some action first, but he let you know right off the rip, this is me. On top of that, man, getting into John Cena's performance, man, he is really shining in this. I thought he was pretty cool and solid in the Suicide Squad movie, but he really is showing his acting chops in this and his comedic timing. I was honestly surprised. You know, I knew he did comedy, and I always got a little chuckle out of some of his guest performances, but he's really, really funny here. His character kind of feels like somebody plucked out of the 80s and dropped into 2021. He is a complete and utter douchebag.
Hey, Sweet Cheeks, can you take my order real quick?
Hi,
Sorry.
sure thing.
But for some reason, he just has some likable qualities. What I think they did really well is add some layers of nuance to his character that make him feel a little more human. In the movie, although I did enjoy the Suicide Squad film, the character of Peacemaker just seemed so comic booky and so cartoonish, and purposefully so. I mean, he's a completely ridiculous character. As far as the side characters introduced, there are a couple that right off the bat are pretty cool, man. And I can already kind of see some of the relationships that are going to be forming throughout this series, whether it be romantically or non-romantically. But with James Gunn, I'm already expecting some curveballs to be thrown into the mix. My favorite character of everyone introduced has to be this freaking eagle named Eagly. Every scene that this little eagle is in is just completely hilarious. All right, so let's get into my nitpicks about the episode. There's only a few, man. I really enjoyed it. So there's a fight scene towards the end of this thing. I thought the choreography was extremely well choreographed. I like how it was shot, the camera angles, the camera movements were amazing. In this scene, there were a couple of times where he got stabbed and cut, and I just thought the CGI was a little sloppy. It wasn't terribly bad. I've seen way worse CGI in blockbuster movies than I've seen on this sequence, but it was just something that I really did notice, and it kind of took me out of it a little bit. So there's a couple of times where joke sequences just kind of go on a little bit too long. Once again, this is going to be something completely based off my opinion and my experience watching the show. You may be cracking up the entire time these joke sequences are happening, but there's a couple of them that just went on a little bit too long. And honestly, those are my only two nitpicks about this first episode. Everything else, in my opinion, was done extremely well. Well, yeah, that's going to be my thoughts on the pilot episode of Peacemaker. I have not yet watched episodes 2 and 3, but I just wanted to sit with that pilot episode for a second. Anybody watching, have you watched Peacemaker yet? And if you have, what did you think about it? Let me know down in the comments how you felt about episodes 1 through 3 so far. Are you liking it? Are you loving it? Is it kind of mid? Are you hating it? Let me know below. It's your boy Eddie Knight, and this is Nerdy Before It Was Cool. And I'm out.